Staff, good afternoon. Thank you for taking time in the manage back training. I do know that software is going to be critical for our students and help us really meet our goal of kind of going wall to wall IB and ensuring we're supporting our students and ensuring we have an increased number of students that complete all the requirements of the IB core to ensure they receive their diplomas in both the diploma program and career program. I want to take this opportunity to kind of welcome everyone back to a full staff meeting. I feel like it's been a while since we've been all together here. First, I want to take the opportunity to apologize for not being there. I actually got pulled out to a meeting this afternoon. We're meeting at the district office, getting some training from LSI around the Marzano instructional framework and how the growth plans will support teachers and what that would look like to ensure that we're providing you guys which is with as much support as possible to ensure the evaluation process is truly going to help teachers grow and meet the needs of our students. But I told the leadership team, I told them I really wanted to ensure that I sent out a video just to kind of address the staff. I think we've had a great start to the school year when it comes to processes and systems. I feel like things are going very smooth, whether it be class schedules and class sizes and just starting some of the pathway development with the new courses, the Project Lead the Way teachers starting to engage, as well as getting all the KCKCC dual enrollment stuff going. We have our AEP lessons. Everyone's kind of transitioning into their new roles and working really well. So I appreciate that. I know teachers are feeling a little bit of the stress of kind of as the new district leadership has kind of set some expectations around specifically around the lesson plan and as well as the board configurations. But I thank you for those teachers that have brought concerns to their administrator as well as to myself, and I thank you for continuing to strive to do what's best for our students, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you. I also want to take this opportunity to apologize for any miscommunication. I know anytime we roll out information, we try to do it as concise as possible to ensure there's no misinterpretation. I was the one in the session during that teacher rotation that kind of rolled out the expectations of lesson plans. Additionally, that day I should have said something about board configurations. Unfortunately, it was left off my list due to an email formatting error, and that's why it came out into an email. I think the following week. But I want to make sure. I know sometimes that teacher rotation day is full of information, and I know there was some things that maybe we felt like we still had questions about. And I know each one of the admin have been in those content planning times and content PLCs and ensuring that they're kind of addressing some of those questions. But sometimes it's important to kind of get us all in the same room to ensure we have those common expectations. So we know the expectation for lesson plans is that lesson plans need to be available in that notebook for all courses that you teach, and they must be a daily lesson plan. There is no requirement to use a certain format. Talking to the other high school principals, I know some of the other buildings are using the Marzano format or that template that was made available. I will tell you the template that I put in the lesson plan notebook is slightly different from the lesson plan template that is available online, linked in the faculty handbook. Um, if you want a direct link to that, I just sent it out to the Math PLC. Anyone in the Math PLC could send you that direct link. And that particular template actually matches the lesson plans that Ms. Shelton had sent out, those example lesson plans as well. I tend to find that lesson plan template is the most user-friendly. If you kind of have a general idea of what you got going on and you have some of those unit plans with those scales already in place, sometimes using that takes, 5 to 10 minutes per each daily lesson, just kind of getting some of that information in there. But you're not required by any means to use any particular template. The only requirement we do have is for the components that must be in a lesson plan. You must have your learning goal and objectives in a lesson plan. You must have your assessment and monitoring piece. So your learning goal and objectives are going to come directly from your scale. Your assessment and monitoring is going to be those intentional assessment opportunities that you have during class. Uh, you know, when I was a math teacher, for example, usually we did almost one target a day as you're kind of doing a particular topic for that day. The assessment might be, using whiteboards in class before the students engage in some kind of independent practice. Any time that you're pausing to ensure all students are on track with that critical chunk of information would be an opportunity for assessment and monitoring. It doesn't have to be a formal assessment every time. You might not be given a test or quiz in that particular class, but any time that you're doing an intentional check for understanding. Your critical information chunks need to be in your lesson plan, and that's where you would derive your agenda from for your board configurations. Instructional strategies and lesson tasks. So between each critical chunk, you probably have some kind of instructional strategy. There might be a one-to-one correlation. You might be using multiple instructional strategies for each critical information chunk. I will say probably our grow area for our entire building is going to be around those instructional strategies. Eventually, we're going to be able to identify those instructional strategies as it relates to the Marzano instructional framework. But for right now, we're probably not using that language quite yet, and that's fine. We can get instructional strategies put in place on kind of those common practices or techniques that you use. And as we have those coaching conversations, we'll talk about how do we implement some of the Marzano language around those instructional strategies. Additionally, as you're looking for lesson task and assessment and monitoring, this book right here is going to be critical. If you know that you want to elaborate on new content by looking up that element, this book provides a lot of instructional techniques as well as monitoring techniques within all these boxes that you can kind of derive some of the information from that book to put directly in your lesson plan. So thank you, Ms. Shelton's idea to make this available hard copy. I know she sent out an email today for the PDF as well. We might have a few more copies if you need this, but we should have got it in that rotation session when you guys talked about growth plans, because when you're doing your growth plan as well, this is a key concept, a key component or resource for those growth plans is you're pulling out some of those techniques that you can try in your action steps to support each one of those instructional elements. You got to have your assignments, adaptations for unique student needs. This is more prevalent sometimes in a traditional high school where you're doing a lot of people that might have achievement gaps or IEPs where you might have to make some modifications. However, some of those adaptations, we have an ELL population we need to make adaptations for, as well as we notice trends in students that might not be as successful as others. So planning for those adaptations and those students are going to be critical. And then just resources and materials. Those are the components that need to be in a lesson plan. Most lesson plans have those components somewhere, and they might not be called out specifically, but you have to start somewhere. I've been telling teachers that compliance is critical, meaning that you have to have something in your notebook. But it's hard to have a coaching conversation around lesson plans that aren't there. So be sure that you're putting those lesson plans in the notebook, and we'll start to have conversations, after visits or during your PLC if you have any clarifying questions. If you have any specific questions about the lesson plan template, just make sure you get with your content supervisor, and they can provide some guidance. I think the lesson plans that Ms. Shelton sent out is probably one of our best examples, and as we start to collect and look at good examples, if the teachers are willing to share, we'll share those as well. Now, the board configurations, it is the expectation from the district leadership that board configurations be available on the board every day for every class. We're looking at some creative techniques for our traveling teachers. I know Dr. Aspleaf uses a notebook that he kind of puts up there on the projector card and flips it over, and of course it has all the board configurations. Mr. DeLizo has talked to some of his teachers that he supervised that are traveling teachers and talked about even laminating a piece of poster board that we can write on for each class. Please talk to the rooms that you're in and see if teachers can reserve you some board space. The board configurations should have your agenda, which is formed directly from your critical content or critical chunks. You need to have the date, your learning target for that day, and specifically what it is you want students to do as they get into class. So the do now or the bell work. What's the expectations of students in your class? These two components are very critical. They help engage, especially the lesson plan, engage us to some coaching conversations with our staff. I know we're the #1 school in Kansas last year, and we have a lot to celebrate. But like I told my team, I said, we celebrated that number one in the spring. Now we got to start to look and say, how can we continue to be the top school in Kansas? We're very unique because we have the best students in Kansas, and we want to ensure that we're providing a service for those students. So, by being very intentional with our lever around tier one instruction and being sure that we're effective with that is going to go with these coaching conversations around lesson plans. We'll start to look at some data as we dive into our PLCs. We're getting some big posters made with our CAP data. We're going to take a look closely at our CAP scores. And as we start our first interim, which I believe comes in October, our interim CAP assessments for math and ELA, we have some work to do, especially with our ELL population. Our ELL population, our building scores 20 to 25% lower than our cohort data. And if we have consistent issues with a subgroup, we could be on a status by the state called TSI, which means one of our subgroups are consistently scoring well below our average for that grade level. So we got some work to do in subgroups to ensure that all students are achieving. And I apologize again for not being there. We'll take the rest of the afternoon to kind of work on growth plans, and we'll have a leadership team here to assist. I appreciate everything that you're doing, and at any time, if you have any questions or any needs, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.